What it is, YouTube, is your boy DC coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. Okay, so today what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to talk about the best way to set up a UAD console or just like a vocal chain in general mindset to help you, yes, you correct, get the best possible sound out of your voice, okay? Make the most out of those ingredients and make the best possible soup, which is the music. If you guys do like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. You want to support the channel, check the links and tell me what you think about this video. So let's get to it right now. So let's look at this. First of all, I want to talk about the UAD console and why even till to this day, why, even though like now we have the native UAD plugins, why I still love using the UAD console, because I feel like it's kind of like a palette, where a painter has a bunch of different colors. And imagine that your vocal is like the canvas, and you have the ability to use all of these different plugins and mix and match different flavors and colors. Sometimes you mix two colors together, now you get a brand new color, a brand new tone. So that's kind of how I've been playing around with it. This year my chain actually has been using the API 2500. Of course I'm talking through my YouTube audio right now, but I've been using the API 2500 on my actual, vocal. And what I do is I only use the mic pre. And the reason why I did this is because this year I wanted to get more like a modern tone out of it. And I definitely understand the API has like a mid forward type of presence inside of it. So it's important to understand what all of these, different type of channel strips provide. So that's what we want to go over. So very first thing, we got something like the API. Usually I do not uh push the preamp too hard. I usually keep it around like, let's say, 30 to 40. It all kind of depends on the rapper and how loud you rap. Cause some people just talk really loud. That's just how they are. And when they rap, they do the same thing. Some people are just naturally loud, and some people they're just naturally quiet. The way they talk, they're just the volume of their voice is just fucking low. You feel me? So that's a very important thing to know. And that's why, that's all about, playing around with your preamp gain on your UAD console. I usually like to push it to 30 or between the range of 30 to 40, depending on the person's, voice. You know what I mean? So something that's important too, when I record, it doesn't matter what the fuck I'm recording in. I always record at negative 18 dB. Nick, why do you record at that exact number? Well, because I use Waves plugins, and that's what the analog model plugins are calibrated to. Now that negative 18 dB is not just Wave plugins, but literally most of the analog modeled plugins are modeled for that, are calibrated at that negative 18 dB. So that's what I record at. You feel me? And yeah, negative 18 dB. Even right now as I'm talking into it, negative 18 dB. So that's the what I shoot for. Don't matter if I'm using an Apollo or a Focusrite or RME, whatever type of interface I'm using, I'm always going for negative 18 dB. And my DAW, I will usually put up a Waves VU master fader and make sure that it's hitting between the numbers 3 and 0 on the default preset. That VU is calibrated to negative 18. All right. So let's talk about the Neve preamp. Till this day, the Neve preamp is so dope to me because of the way that it's balanced. You feel me? Like, it's very balanced. We're always thinking about the Neve preamp, how it goes so well with the peanut butter with the jelly, the spaghetti with the sauce, the Neve preamp and the CL1B. But the most important thing about the Neve preamp, we must understand it has a transformer inside of it, right? And also the Neve preamp is a very important component too, because it also, kind of sets you up to where your vocal has a nice bit of a mid-range girth. Not overwhelmingly girthy, but just a solid mid-range that you want, that really helps the vocal just feel like something, just feel radio ready. Also, it's a tone that many people are familiar with. That's why the Neve is great. It also has transistors inside of it. And sometimes, depending on how your voice sounds, you might want a little bit of that transistor because it can give just a slight bit of presence and shimmer in the top end. That's what transistors do. So if you're somebody who has like a voice that it's kind of like, I feel like monotone, or maybe like your voice is slightly harsh, maybe I would go with a Neve preamp. All right, after that, I love to use this was like my first love on the UAD a console, and it was the 610. Now the 610 is a very good preamp, right? Because it's creamy, thumping. It reminds me of Gouda cheese. You feel me? It reminds me of the shrimp Alfredo sauce. Our chicken Alfredo sauce, how it's creamy and it's milky, but it's still got that good ass taste to it. Well, that's what the 610 is to me. So I use this motherfucker a lot. And I remember when I used the 610, something crazy I used to do is I used to dip the lows. This is a low shelf, so I would dip a little bit of lows I don't remember what it was, but I had like a preset. I think I used to just dip a little bit of lows and I used to boost a little bit of highs. And I would not recommend using EQ, but sometimes when you become advanced, I wouldn't recommend EQ for a beginner, but when you become a little bit advanced, you can definitely use you know, a little bit, just a tad bit of dB of EQ just to really give your vocal that lift. And you understand that you're recording into these plugins, right? So as you're listening to it, your voice is already kind of sounding, it's not sounding skinny and weak. It's sounding like an anorexic supermodel, right? Because your voice is not sounding skinny and actually it's feeling like it's heavy. Maybe that might influence you. Now you have a little bit more confidence in your voice as you are rapping or singing. So that's why, to me, these plugins are still essential. Even though some people say I don't need the UAD and shit like that, it feels good to just have a little bit of seasoning on top of the motherfucking noodles right before we bust down with the vocal recording. Okay, now let's talk about our compressors. We talked about our preamps. All right. Oh, last preamp, Neve 88RS, the one I'm talking through right now. I feel like this one is warm. It's warm. When I think of the tone, I think of Adele. You know, I would think the most important thing for something like this is also the compression section, right? So as I'm gonna segue to the compression part, right? So with the Neve, it has a warm tone, the preamp, but the actual compression is a VCA compression. So think about an SSL bus compressor, a SSLE compressor, how it just gives that it just holds, gives that thick peanut butter glue. You feel me? That quicksand, it really holds the shit like Indiana Jones. It really pulls everything together. Indiana Jones getting pulled into that quicksand. That's what a VCA compressor does. It really just pulls everything together. And you can really maximize that by using a low ratio, especially on a vocal. I feel like you want to use a low ratio because a low ratio has a way of just balancing things out. Higher ratios, I feel like they're great too. You could do a dB on a higher ratio. You could do a dB on a lower ratio. But the most important thing to know is that the ratio, the harder the ratio you would get, the knee kind of hardens out. You feel me? So it becomes a little bit more jagged. You know what I mean? So a light ratio, anything between one and a half and 2.5, I would recommend. Right. So that the VCA compression combined with the warmth is really dope on the channel strip like that. LA2A are always a timeless classic for me. When I use this, I use the LA2 Legacy. The reason why I use the LA2 Legacy is because there's not going to be any tone inside of it, right? It's only modeling just the compression section. It's not modeling the other parts of the LA2A, which is like the tube circuit. And sometimes the tube circuit can make it bright. So for my voice personally, I use the LA2 Legacy. But sometimes if you want just a little bit more juice, you want a little bit more salt and pepper, you want a little bit more paprika, you want a little bit more mint and thyme and rosemary, you can use the regular LA2A. You feel me? And that would be the only difference. Now understand too, the ratio on the LA2A, the compression is a three ratio. I think it's three. Yeah, three to one. And the limiter is 10 to 1. I always use the compressor and I always go for about a dB or two on the high parts. I let the rapper or yourself, maybe you're rapping too, just practice your verse. Practice your verse. You got your phone in your hand, rap it like how you would really rap it and look at that motherfucking meter and just make sure like on the highest parts when you really go in, it doesn't go past more than 1 to 3 dB. And that's kind of how you would set a compressor like that. Now we understand the peanut butter. Now let's look at the jelly. All right. We got the spaghetti. Now we got the meat sauce, the meatballs and stuff like that. And the bread. You feel me? Don't forget the fucking bread. And that's what the Tube Tech is. You feel me? The Tube Tech, I feel like, is a really dope compressor. Whenever I use this thing, man, I'm gonna keep it real. I do not turn on my threshold. I just let the vocal run through the plugin. I just use it as a tube saturator on the way in of my UAD console. Now, if you do want to use it, I recommend going for low ratio, like how I just said. Low ratios really hold everything together, and of course, the advantage of this one is you get to go 2 to 1, right? But unlike the LA2, right? The LA2A does not provide you with the opportunity to play with your attack and release. This is an important thing to note too, right? The higher your peak reduction is, right? Let's say your peak reduction is all the way up here and you're only doing a dB. Your peak reduction could also be down all the way down here and still be doing a dB depending on how your preamp is hitting. You feel me? Like how I said, 30 to 40 dB. Maybe you could go even more. Just know the higher the knob, the peak reduction knob is, that's going to give you a slower attack and release, right? That's how it is. It's auto attack and release. And the lower this knob is, you get a faster attack and release. It's still even though it says fast attack, it's still pretty slow because it's a LA2. So that's a gem to get more responsiveness out of the LA2 2A. All right. So yeah, back to the peanut, the whatever the fuck we're gonna call it. Tube-Tech CL1B is dope because now you get to play with that attack and release. You don't got to do all those fancy tricks like how I showed you on LA2. You know, make sure your attack for the most part is slow. I probably wouldn't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. All right. Try to keep it to where it's like relatively slow. And you want your release to be, I would say, somewhat fast. Depends on the flow of the rapper. Because if you're rapping like this, maybe you want a quick release. But if you're rapping a little bit more normal pace, or maybe you switching up your flow, you want a medium release that will work and sound good on your flow if you rap fast or if you rap slow and you're harmonizing. So that's something very important to know as well. All right. And last thing right here, just to shout it out, because of course, maybe some people use it, is the LA2. This has the slowest release out of all of them. This is like the most slowest one. This is the slow beat up 2002 Toyota Corolla. You feel me? That's still somehow riding around, even though it's on 200 and something thousand miles. So that's what this would be right here. Okay. And yeah, it's just a little bit slower. I wouldn't really recommend it for maybe modern rap because I know a lot of people like to rap fast nowadays type shit, and it might be a little bit too slow. And if that release is still clamping down, as you get into that next word, that next bar, it's gonna feel like something's holding it back. Like the vocal is literally been put on a restraining order. Like it's been locked in a box. It needs the locksmith. You feel me? It's like when you lock your key in the car. That shit's just locked up and you can't really get it under control. You feel me? And the last thing I wanted to shout out to is putting a little bit of EQ on your vocals before on the way in. Now, this is advanced technique. What I do though is maybe if your microphone doesn't sound good, right? Because the microphone you're using is important too. Maybe what you want to do is you might want to just add a little bit of EQ. I wouldn't even tell you the EQ. What I would do first of all is just put the pull tech on the back end of your vocal chain, right? Put it on the back end of your vocal chain and just let it run through. And I'm telling you, just the saturation inside of this plugin will give a little bit of sheen to your vocal. I'm telling you, a little bit of sheen and a little bit of that density in the low end. Now, I believe on my actual recording thing, I'm gonna show you guys what I've been using recently. I think mine's is modern rap. Let me see. Let me check right now. Okay, yeah. So this is what I've been using. Yeah, just a little bit of a touch at 8K, and that's what works for my voice. So it's all about knowing the strengths and the weaknesses of your voice because shit, maybe you feel like your voice is really skinny. You feel me? Where even after all that processing you done did, you still feel like your voice is skinny as fuck. Well, maybe what you might want to do because you know you're recording into these plugins, right? You might just want to put on that pull tech on your voice and maybe just boost like a dB on the low end, you know, just to give it a little bit of weight as it goes into your DAW, as it goes into your chain. You feel me? And I like to do this a lot because I like to play around with my vocal chain right here and play around with my actual template in the DAW, doing that at the same time. So boom, every time I record, I get the sound that I want instantly. It feels like a motherfucking privilege. I ain't gonna lie. It feels like a privilege when you just take like, 20 to 30 minutes, you got your practice versus you rapping into the UAD console, you rapping with your Pro Tools template, and you kind of like fucking with the settings in there, really dialing this shit in. But in order to do that, you got to understand what all the plugins do. And I hope I was able to help you understand some of these plugins like the preamp, you feel me, the compression, and maybe using certain plugins as a saturator on the way in, like the Tube Tech or the EQP1A. All right. So I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I just want to say appreciate you now, YouTube gang. Peace.